They thought humiliating a depressed black girl in the cafeteria would be the highlight of their day, until the highlight became watching their ringleader kneel in terror 5 minutes later. At Silver Ridge High, cruelty is cheap, but consequences are expensive, and Derek Mallory was about to pay full price. One trash can stunt, one smirk, one shove, and suddenly he wasn't bullying a victim. He was provoking an assassin who had spent years trying to forget the skills she was trained to use. Keep watching, because the ending will not disappoint. The cafeteria at Silver Ridge High exploded with noise the way it always did on Mondays. Chairs scraping, sneakers pounding, laughter ricocheting off the walls in chaotic waves. But the chaos sharpened into something colder the moment Kalia Rivers walked in, her shoulders drawn inward, her steps quiet like someone trying to move without being noticed. It didn't matter. Someone was already watching. Across the room, Derek Mallory, captain of the Apex crew, heir to the school's unearned hierarchy, tilted his chin toward her with a smirk that meant trouble. His friends closed in behind him like shadows. They didn't even try to hide their intention. The whole cafeteria sensed it. An incoming spectacle. Kalia sat at the far corner, setting down her untouched lunch. She didn't look up when the footsteps closed around her. She didn't need to. The shift in air pressure told her everything. "Look who crawled back to school," Derek announced loudly, lifting a large cafeteria trash bin with both hands. Laughter erupted around him, cruel and eager. "Thought you needed a shower, Rivers?" Before anyone could process the moment, he tipped the entire bin over her head. Trash cascaded down, wet paper towels, crumpled wrappers, half-eaten food, shattered plastic cups. A wave of disgusted gasps echoed through the room, but Kalia didn't flinch, not a twitch, not a gasp, not a single protest. She simply sat there, trash falling across her hair, her shoulders, her lap, like she'd been expecting it. The cafeteria froze. Derek expected screaming, crying, outrage, anything but this terrifying stillness. For a full second he hesitated. And in that hesitation, Kalia finally lifted her eyes. She looked up at him through strands of garbage, and her gaze, quiet, hollow, unreadable, cut through the noise like a blade. There was no anger, no fear, no humiliation, only something so controlled, so restrained, that it shook Derek more than any outburst could have. Behind him, Maddie whispered, "Why isn't she reacting?" Zane swallowed. "Dude, that's not normal." Even the tables nearby leaned back, startled. Something about Kalia's stillness didn't feel human. It felt trained. A single slip of paper fluttered from the trash pile and landed beside her hand. Kalia's eyes locked onto it instantly. A symbol, 3 intersecting lines carved into the paper, flashed beneath the cafeteria lights. Her heartbeat stumbled. That symbol didn't belong to a high school. It belonged to another life, a life she had buried. No one noticed her fingers curl, subtle and calculated. No one but her understood what that symbol meant. Someone knew who she was. The Apex crew kept laughing, but the sound felt thinner now, like even they could sense the shift in atmosphere. Derek forced himself to regain his swagger and stepped closer. "Come on, Rivers. Say something," he taunted. "At least cry a little. Show us you're alive." Kalia didn't answer. Instead, she stood up slowly, letting the trash slide off her clothes. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, precise. Too precise for a girl who was supposed to be fragile and depressed. A murmur rippled through the room as she brushed past Derek without a word. For the first time all year, he felt invisible to her. That terrified him more than he could admit. "What? You think you can walk away?" Derek barked, his voice cracking. He shoved his chair aside and stormed after her. "We're not done, Rivers." But Kalia didn't turn back. She didn't speed up. She didn't break posture. She walked out of the cafeteria like someone heading toward a destination only she could see, like someone who had just received a message meant only for her. And Derek followed, unaware he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Derek corners her in the restroom hallway, determined to finish what he started. The restroom in hallway C was the kind of place most students avoided. Flickering lights, cracked tiles, the faint hum of an ancient ventilation fan. The kind of place where secrets could happen unnoticed. The kind of place the Apex crew chose intentionally. Kalia pushed open the door without hesitation. She didn't look back, even though she heard their footsteps closing in behind her. Her face remained unreadable, the same controlled mask she wore in the cafeteria. The door slammed shut. A rough click followed, the lock sliding into place. She didn't need to turn around to know who was there. Zane, tall and twitchy, blocked the exit with his back. Maddie, mean smirk painted red with lipstick, twirled her phone like a weapon. Colton, bulky and eager to impress, cracked his knuckles for dramatic effect. Derek wasn't with them. Cowards rarely confront alone. They send their shadows first. "Rivers," Maddie said, stepping forward, "you think you can walk away after embarrassing Derek in front of the whole cafeteria?" Kalia didn't move. She stood near the far sink, gazing at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Trash still clinging to her hair, her hoodie stained, her eyes hollow. She looked calm, too calm. Colton shoved her shoulder. "Say something. Apologize. Make this easy." She blinked once, then twice. Her voice was soft but sharp as glass. "You three are standing in the wrong positions," Maddie scoffed. "Excuse me?" Zane frowned. "What does that mean?" Kalia didn't answer. The fluorescent light overhead flickered. Once, twice. A warning pulse. Before any of them could react, the restroom went completely dark, a suffocating black that swallowed every outline, every breath, every sense of direction. The entire blackout lasted exactly 1.3 seconds, but inside that sliver of darkness, something moved, something fast, precise, silent, a thud, a gasp, the scrape of shoes against tile. When the lights flickered back to life, the entire room had changed. Zane was on the floor near the sinks, clutching his wrist. Maddie was sprawled against the wall, phone shattered beside her. Colton lay face down, groaning, one shoe missing for reasons he couldn't comprehend. None of them had any idea what had just happened. Kalia stood exactly where she had been, hands at her sides, breathing steady, as if she had never moved at all. Maddie scrambled up, shaking. What did you do?" Her voice cracked, all bravado gone. "I didn't touch you," Kalia said coldly. "You attacked the wrong person." Zane staggered upright, panic rising in his throat. No. People don't move that fast. That wasn't normal. That wasn't—" His eyes shot upward toward the security camera in the corner. Red light on. Recording. But the footage on the monitor back in the security office was already glitching, static lines slicing across the screen, image warping, sound cutting out. Exactly 6 seconds of corrupted footage. Exactly enough time to hide what really happened. Zane pointed at the camera, trembling violently. "Kota, she's not a normal student. She's not." His voice cracked into a scream that echoed through the tiled room. Maddie grabbed Colton's arm and pulled him up, her face drained of color. "We need to get out of here. Now!" They stumbled to the door, fumbling with the lock. When it finally swung open, they fled into the hallway like people escaping a crime scene they couldn't explain. The door slammed behind them, leaving Kalia alone again. She turned back to the mirror, wiping a streak of trash from her cheek. But her eyes weren't hollow now. They were focused, sharpened, calculating. The symbol from the cafeteria still burned in her mind. Someone was sending her a message, and someone else was watching. Whispers spread through the halls within minutes. Students claim they saw Kalia move too fast, and teachers begin paying attention. The air in room 214 felt heavier than usual, thick with whispers about the restroom incident. Students sat stiffly at their desks as Ms. Calder paced the front of the classroom, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her voice carried through the room as she lectured about figurative language, but no one was really listening. Everyone kept glancing at Kalia Rivers. She sat in the second-to-last row, hood up, eyes low, hands folded neatly on her desk. If she felt the weight of the stairs around her, she didn't show it. She didn't fidget. She didn't shift. She didn't blink any more than necessary. She was still, too still. Across the room, Derek Mallory slouched in his seat, hiding a mix of anger, fear, and confusion beneath the smirk glued to his face. He hadn't slept since the cafeteria. The hallway whispers haunted him. She didn't even flinch. She looked at you like you weren't real, the camera footage corrupted. People don't move that fast. He needed to prove to himself that Kalia was nothing. Just another girl he'd pushed too far. Just another victim. So Derek picked up a pen. Ms. Calder turned back toward the board, her voice steady. And so symbolism allows an author to... The pen sliced through the air, fast, direct, aimed at the back of Kalia's head. It should have hit. Instead, Kalia moved, not by flinching, not by ducking, not by reacting late. She tilted her head, smooth, precise, almost mechanical, causing the pen to shoot past her ear and strike the whiteboard with a loud snap. The entire room froze. Ms. Calder spun around. "Who threw that?" Derek's mouth hung open, dread crawling up his spine. He'd thrown pens at dozens of students over the years. They always yelped, ducked, swore, complained. But Kalia, she reacted before instinct, before sound, before thought, as if she knew the exact millisecond to move. Kalia didn't look at Derek. She didn't even break posture. She simply stared at the pen vibrating against the board. The silence stretched, suffocating. Ms. Calder narrowed her eyes at Kalia, not accusing, but analyzing. There was fear there, curiosity, and something else. Recognition, maybe, though she could never admit it. "Kalia," she said quietly, "how did you see that coming?" Kalia didn't answer. Her voice, when it came, was soft. "I didn't." But the flatness of her tone only made it stranger. Derek swallowed hard, his confidence collapsing. Sweat prickled at the back of his neck. He felt something he had never felt before. Not power, not adrenaline, but genuine fear. This girl was wrong. All wrong. Impossible. Ms. Calder stepped closer, her expression tightening. This wasn't normal teenage behavior. This wasn't coincidence. It felt like a reflex trained somewhere far from a high school classroom. Before she could question further, something flickered across Kalia's desk. A red dot, laser, moving slow, tracing the edge of her notebook. Kalia's eyes shifted, just slightly, tracking the dot as it swept across the surface, almost invisible to anyone else. Her pulse steadied, her breath cooled. Someone was watching, not a student, not a teacher, someone with equipment. No one at Silver Ridge High should have. She lifted her gaze toward the windows. The blinds were halfway closed, shadows slicing the sunlight into narrow strips. Between the slits, she caught the faintest glint. Metal, glass, positioning. A scope. Her stomach dropped. Ms. Calder noticed Kalia stiffen. "Is something wrong?" Kalia answered without taking her eyes off the window. "You should call the principal." "Why?" "Because someone else is in the building, and they're not here for you." The room fell utterly silent. Even Derek's breath hitched. Ms. Calder didn't ask another question. Her instincts kicked in faster than logic, and she strode to the phone mounted on the wall, dialing the principal's office with trembling fingers. The laser dot vanished, but Kalia knew the truth. She had been found. Principal Hale summons Kalia immediately, shaken by teacher reports and the corrupted footage from earlier. Principal Rowan Hale's office was unusually silent. The blinds were half drawn, slicing the afternoon light into narrow beams that cut across the floor like interrogation lines. Hale sat behind his mahogany desk, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the door as Kalia Rivers was escorted in by the school security officer. She moved as if floating, silent, controlled, unreadable. Hale couldn't tell if she was terrified or completely unbothered. Something about that uncertainty made him shift in his chair. "Have a seat, Miss Rivers," he said, forcing authority into his voice. Kalia didn't sit. She simply stared at him, waiting. Hale exhaled sharply and tapped a few keys on his computer. I've received multiple reports about strange behavior today. The cafeteria, hallway C, your English class. I need to understand what's going on." Kalia didn't blink. "You won't." Her tone wasn't defiant. It was factual, like she already knew the limits of what he could discover. Hale bristled. "We'll see about that." He opened the student record system and typed her name. Rivers, Kalia, EA loading bar swirled for longer than usual. Hale frowned. The system never lagged this way. Finally, a window popped up. Most of the screen was black. A red banner stretched across the top. Restricted. Federal level clearance required access. Denied. Hale's face went pale. School files weren't supposed to have federal locks. The only times he'd seen that level of restriction were in district emergency training modules, cases involving government witnesses, protected minors, or something darker. He clicked again, trying a backdoor path. "Access denied." He clicked a third time. "Attempt logged. Do not proceed." The security officer beside him shifted uneasily. Hale swallowed. "Miss Rivers, why is your file locked behind federal clearance? Who are you?" Kalia didn't move. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Stop digging, Principal Hale." Her eyes lifted, and there it was again, that calm, chilling certainty that made grown adults feel small. "If you dig deeper," she said, "you will regret it." Hale felt a cold ripple climb up his spine. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't bravado. It felt like a warning from someone who knew exactly how much danger he was in. He tried to compose himself. "I can't ignore this. You were involved in multiple incidents today. Students were hurt." "I defended myself," Kalia replied. "And I didn't hurt anyone as much as I could have." The room froze. The security officer instinctively placed a hand on the radio clipped to his belt. Hale licked his dry lips. "Whatever your past is, you're in a school now. You're under my jurisdiction." "No," Kalia said. "I'm not." As if on cue, Hale's computer emitted a sharp chime. A red notification flashed across the screen. "Security alert. External agent detected on campus perimeter. Potential breach." The officer stiffened. "Sir, we don't have any scheduled law enforcement on site today." Hale clicked the alert, and a grainy image from the parking lot camera appeared. A figure in a dark coat stood near the staff vehicles, face obscured, posture too rigid to be casual. He wasn't moving. He wasn't pacing. He was simply staring, straight up at the office window. Hale squinted. Is he looking at us?" Kalia didn't need to look. She already knew. "Yes," she said quietly. "He's here for me." The officer instinctively stepped between Kalia and the door. "Ma'am, do you know this man?" Kalia's jaw tightened. Memories flickered behind her eyes. Metal floors, fluorescent lights, orders whispered in the dark. "He's not the only one." Hale pushed back from his desk, panic rising. "What is happening? Is this some kind of gang situation? Are you in danger?" Kalia finally turned her head to face him fully. "I am danger, Principal Hale," she said softly. "And someone has decided they want to take that back." Down in the parking lot, the man's coat shifted as if he were reaching for something inside it. Hale's breath caught. The external agent took one slow step forward. Derek and the Apex crew confront Kalia again, right as the threat outside begins closing in. By late afternoon, the cafeteria at Silver Ridge High looked like a hollow shell of itself. The roar of lunchtime chaos had dissolved into silence. Empty tables stretched across the room like abandoned barricades. Only a few lights hummed overhead, casting long shadows across the floor. It was the perfect place for someone to make a mistake. Derek Mallory stood in the center of the room with what remained of the Apex crew. Zane still nursing his wrist, Maddie shaking despite her forced smirk, and Colton with a bruise blooming across his cheek from the restroom incident he still couldn't explain. None of them wanted to be here. Derek did. He needed to get his power back. He needed to show Kalia Rivers, and everyone else, that he wasn't afraid, but he was. His heart hammered under his Letterman jacket. His palms were slick. His breathing wasn't steady. None of it mattered. Pride was louder than fear, and pride had driven him here. "Spread out," Derek ordered, though his voice cracked slightly. "When she walks in, we end this." Maddie swallowed. "You sure about this? After what happened in Hall C?" "I said we end this." No one dared argue. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, slow, measured, too calm. Derek felt his stomach twist. The cafeteria doors opened. Kalia Rivers stepped inside. She looked exactly the same as earlier, hood up, expression unreadable, posture annoyingly composed. It didn't look like she was walking into a confrontation. It looked like she was walking to another class. Derek tried to swallow the dryness in his throat. "There she is," he muttered, more to convince himself than his crew. Kalia paused a few feet away, surveying the group encircling her without a flicker of concern. Her gaze passed over each of them like she was assessing a tactical layout. Then she said it. 9 soft, lethal words. "Don't try something you can't possibly understand, Derek." The words hit harder than a shout. Zane shifted nervously. Colton took a reflexive step back. Maddie stopped breathing entirely. But Derek, cornered by his own ego, forced a laugh that didn't sound like one. "You think you scare me?" he spat. "You think I'm just going to let you make a fool out of me?" Kalia tilted her head, the faintest sign of disappointment. "I didn't make you anything." That stung deeper than an insult. "To hell with this." Derek lunged. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He just moved, fueled by panic and adrenaline, swinging blindly at the girl he still believed, desperately to be normal. But Kalia wasn't there when his fist reached its target. She had stepped aside with fluid precision, almost a whisper of movement. Derek stumbled. Before he could recover, before his crew could blink, Kalia's hand snapped forward. Not a punch, not a strike. Something far cleaner. Her fingers clamped around Derek's wrist, her other hand pressed against his elbow. And in 0.5 seconds, his entire arm was locked behind his back, forcing him to his knees in a position he'd never experienced. Humiliating, vulnerable, powerless. Pain shot through his shoulder. He gasped. "What? How?" Kalia leaned close enough for him to hear her breath, but her tone remained quiet, almost gentle. "You're lucky I chose restraint." Zane let out a strangled sound. "Dude!" "She moved before you even swung," Maddie whispered. "This is insane." Colton stared like he'd seen a ghost. "People can't do that." Derek trembled, realization clamping around his throat. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't intimidation. This was control, absolute and effortless. And then, beep, beep. A piercing alarm ripped through the building. The overhead lights flashed red. The cafeteria doors slammed shut automatically. A robotic voice echoed through the speakers. "Security breach detected. Campus on lockdown." Kalia released Derek at once. Her eyes snapped toward the exit. She recognized the timing too well. Someone had entered the building. Someone not authorized. Someone looking for her. The cafeteria becomes the center of a confrontation as the external threat moves inside. The red lockdown lights pulsed across the cafeteria like a heartbeat, painting the room in flashes of warning. Doors slid shut with metallic thuds. The intercom repeated its cold, mechanical alert. "Security breach detected." Students who had been lingering in the hallways rushed toward the source of the alarm, drawn by curiosity and fear. And they found it here. A crowd formed in seconds, phones lifted, cameras rolling. Dozens of eyes widened when they saw Derek Mallory on his knees, arm twisted behind his back, sweat dripping down his temples. His face was a mix of humiliation, pain, and something he had never felt before. Pure fear. Kalia Rivers stood over him, steady as a still frame, unshaken by the chaos. "Let me go," Derek gasped, voice cracking. Kalia didn't tighten her hold. She didn't need to. Every part of Derek's posture told her he was finished. "Stand down," she said softly. But Derek, desperate to salvage the last shreds of his pride, jerked violently, trying to break free. He swung his free arm upward, aiming toward her jaw, the last wild strike of a cornered animal. Students screamed. Phones rose higher. But Kalia had already moved. Her foot pivoted. Her hand swept Derek's arm aside. Her knee pressed lightly into his shoulder blade. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no unnecessary impact. Derek hit the floor flat on his chest, breath knocked out of him. His phone skidded across the tiles. Kalia stepped back, giving him space, not to escape, but to understand how hopeless the situation was. "She didn't even try," whispered a freshman near the door. "She didn't even—" "It looked like choreography," another said. "No," someone else corrected. "It looked like training, and then it began. The phones, one video, then 10, then 30. Within minutes, the clip of Derek being dismantled by the quiet girl who never spoke shot across the school's group chats, social media pages, and DM threads. The video spread faster than the alarm itself. Minutes. Just 3 minutes. That was all it took for half the school to see Derek's pride shatter. On the floor, Derek curled in on himself. His breath shook. His shoulders trembled. He wasn't just in pain. He was crying, not because of a broken ego, but because deep down he finally understood what his instincts had been screaming all day. Kalia Rivers wasn't someone you bullied. She was someone you survived. Students whispered around him, "She's too fast. Did you see her footwork? That wasn't self-defense. That was something else. No normal girl moves like that." Kalia didn't acknowledge any of it, her gaze fixed on the locked doors, the flashing lights, the corners of the room where shadows seemed too still. She felt the shift in the air, pressure tightening like a snare closing. Someone was coming, someone who didn't care about school rules or lockdown alarms or the fragile life she'd tried to build here. Behind her, Derek struggled to sit up. "What are you—" His voice broke. "What are you, Kalia?" She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. The answer arrived for her. A voice, deep, cold, impossibly familiar, spoke from behind her, echoing through the cafeteria with the weight of command. "Kalia Rivers, it's time to come back." Gasps shot through the crowd. Students spun toward the source. Derek froze. Kalia didn't move, didn't turn, didn't breathe. Her body stiffened, not from fear, but from recognition. She knew that voice. She knew the man it belonged to. And she knew what his presence meant. Her old life had found her. Kalia finally turns toward the figure, the first agent sent to retrieve her. The cafeteria doors shuddered under the lockdown system before sliding open just a crack, just enough for a single figure to step inside. Agent Mercer, tall, sharp-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal tactical coat that didn't belong anywhere near a high school. He moved with the kind of stillness that made people instinctively step back, even if he hadn't taken a threatening posture. His eyes were cold steel, trained directly on one person. Kalia Rivers. Students closest to the door gasped and stumbled away. Phones dropped. A few screamed. But Mercer didn't spare a single glance at them. His entire world had narrowed to the quiet girl standing in the center of the cafeteria. "Kalia Rivers," Mercer said, voice steady and controlled. "Unit 7, you're coming with me." The room went silent. Derek, now sitting against a table leg, flinched at the name. Unit 7? He had heard rumors, dark, ridiculous ones, about children being trained into something inhuman. Whispers of a government program that turned kids into operatives. He always assumed it was just movie nonsense. But the way Kalia's face shifted, barely, but enough, told him it wasn't a rumor. Her breath left her body slow and quiet, like she'd been waiting for this moment, dreading it, expecting it. She didn't turn fully toward Mercer at first, only angled her head, her voice calm as ice. "I told you," she said. "I'm not coming back." Mercer's jaw tensed. "This isn't optional." Unit 7 is property of Valkyrian. You know the terms. You know the consequences of defection. Whispers fluttered through the crowd like panicked birds. Valkyrian? Property? Defection? Derek felt his skin prickle. This wasn't a school fight anymore. This wasn't bullying. This was something lethal. Kalia raised her chin a fraction. Valkyrian killed my family. I owe them nothing. A ripple of shock spread through the watching students. Even Mercer paused for half a beat, not because he doubted her, but because she had said it out loud. You misunderstand, Mercer replied. Valkyrian didn't kill your family. Your family died because you left. Kalia's hands tightened at her sides. Derek saw the shift. He knew anger when he saw it. But this wasn't anger. This was grief, wearing the mask of discipline. Kalia spoke quietly, each word a blade. You don't get to rewrite what happened. Mercer inhaled, patience fracturing. I wasn't sent to negotiate, Seven. I was sent to retrieve. He reached inside his coat. Students screamed and dove behind tables. A few bolted for the far corner despite the lockdown. Chairs overturned. A tray clattered across the floor. Kalia didn't move. Not an inch. Mercer withdrew a compact metal device, sleek, black, glowing faintly at the edges. A capture mode trigger, not a weapon meant to kill. A weapon meant to restrain, the kind used on highly trained operatives. Mercer's voice dropped to a chilling monotone. Engaging recovery protocol, the device unfolded like a mechanical flower, releasing a pulse of blue light. Derek's breath caught. Kalia finally turned fully toward Mercer, body shifting into a stance so fluid, so instinctive, it didn't look learned, it looked embedded. You don't want to do that, she warned. Mercer pressed the activation switch. A sharp hum filled the cafeteria. The blue light surged outward. Derek covered his head, heart pounding out of his chest. This girl, the one he bullied, mocked, humiliated, was standing face to face with a government agent wielding a tool designed to capture people far more dangerous than anyone in this school. And she wasn't flinching. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. Mercer stepped forward. Kalia's eyes hardened. Somewhere behind a row of tables, Derek whispered to himself, voice shaking, She's not human. She can't be. And then the blue pulse exploded toward Kalia. Derek remains hidden, watching in terror as Kalia fights against the activated capture mode, and Mercer realizes retrieving Unit 7 won't be as easy as he was told. The hall outside the cafeteria pulsed red with the strobe of emergency lights, each flash slicing the corridor into fragments of light and shadow. The speakers continued their cold, repetitive warning. Security breach, unauthorized presence on campus. As panic rippled through the student body, Kalia Rivers sprinted through the hallway, boots gliding silently across the polished floor. Behind her, Agent Mercer advanced like a shadow that couldn't be outrun, the activated capture device humming with lethal intention. He didn't shout orders, he didn't threaten. He simply hunted. Kalia, he called out sharply. Stand down! This ends now. She ignored him, slipping around a corner with mechanical precision. She knew how far she could get. She knew his stride length, his line of sight, the time it would take him to reach her. She'd calculated it before he even entered the cafeteria, but she hadn't calculated Derek Mallory. He stumbled into the hallway from a side door, gasping for breath, eyes wide with something between guilt and terror. The bruises from their earlier fight throbbed across his cheek. His arm still ached from her lock, but none of that mattered now. He saw Kalia being chased. He saw Mercer's device sparking with blue light. He saw fear, not from her, but from the situation swallowing her whole. And for the first time in Derek Mallory's entire life, he moved not out of cruelty, pride, or anger, but instinct. Kalia, look out! Kalia turned just as Mercer reached her. The blue capture field burst open like an expanding cage of light, designed to lock nerve signals and drop her to the floor in seconds. But before it touched her, Derek slammed into Mercer. The impact was messy, clumsy, desperate. Derek had no technique, no training. He just tackled the man with all the force of someone who couldn't stand what he'd become. Not with what he now understood. Mercer didn't budge at first. The agent barely staggered, but the surprise made him lose precise aim. The capture field sputtered, hitting the lockers instead. Blue static crackled across the metal. "Get off me!" Mercer snapped, shoving Derek off with brutal efficiency. Derek flew across the hallway, crashing shoulder first into the floor. Pain shot through him. He groaned, but even through the agony, he lifted his head. "Kalia, run!" he gasped. The words stunned her far more than Mercer's pursuit. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't taunting her. He wasn't demanding power. He was helping her. Not out of pity, but because he had finally seen the truth. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't the threat. She was the target, and Derek had been helping her hunters by accident this whole time. Mercer stepped forward, his irritation now boiling into open frustration. "This is not your concern, boy. You have no idea what she is." "I know enough," Derek shouted through clenched teeth. "She didn't hurt us. She could have killed us, but she didn't. You're the one chasing her like an animal." Mercer's eyes hardened. "I don't chase. I retrieve." He raised the device again. Kalia's breath slowed. Her fingers curled. Her weight shifted. Derek saw it too late. The way her stance changed, the way her posture dropped, the way her pupils thinned with cold focus. "Kalia, what are you?" She whispered one word, "Forbidden." Then she moved, faster than the hallway lights could catch, faster than Mercer could anticipate, faster than Derek could process. Kalia twisted behind Mercer in a blur, her hands striking two precise points at the base of his neck, nerve points no civilian should know. The device clattered from Mercer's hand as his arm spasmed. The agent staggered, breath catching. "You," he choked, "you weren't supposed to use that technique." Kalia stepped back, chest rising and falling with barely controlled restraint. "That's why it's forbidden," she said. Mercer touched his neck, furious, humiliated, and, deep down, afraid. "Enough games," he hissed. He tapped a communicator on his wrist. A coded signal flashed, and then Mercer spoke words that made Derek's blood run cold. "Initiate retrieval escalation. Deploy Director Voss." Kalia froze. Derek looked at her, trembling. Who is Voss?" Kalia didn't answer. She didn't need to. The terror in her eyes answered for her. The entire school feels the shift as Director Voss, the architect of Valkyrian, arrives, and the hunt turns deadly. The security camera room at Silver Ridge High was a cramped, windowless space filled with humming monitors and the stale smell of old wiring. Normally, Principal Rowan Hale avoided it. He preferred dealing with student fights and tardy slips, not staring at grainy hallways on screens. But tonight was different. Sirens still pulsed through the building. Every monitor flickered with chaotic motion, students running, doors locking, red lights flashing. And at the center of the room, Hale stood rigid, one hand braced on the desk as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. Next to him stood Agent Mercer, rubbing the numbed side of his neck, jaw clenched with irritation. The defeat he'd suffered from Kalia Rivers still burned in his posture, though he hid it behind professional coldness. Mercer tapped the control panel. "Director Voss is connecting now." Hale swallowed. "Director who?" "You'll understand shortly," Mercer said, not bothering to reassure him. The largest monitor went black for a beat. Then a face appeared. Director Voss. Not youthful, not old, ageless in the way predators are, sharp jawline, silver-flecked hair, eyes not cold but empty. He wore a dark tactical coat with an insignia Hale didn't recognize but instinctively feared. Hale's breath hitched. He had never seen someone radiate such emotionless authority. Mercer straightened. "Director, I engaged Unit 7, but she resisted capture with unexpected skill." Voss didn't blink. "You underestimated her." "I won't again," Mercer replied stiffly. Voss ignored the comment, gaze sliding toward Hale like a scalpel assessing a specimen. "Who is this?" Hale stepped forward, voice unsteady. I'm Principal Hale. This is my school. I demand to know why armed agents are pursuing one of my students." "She isn't your student," Voss said, cutting him off with surgical precision. "She is classified property." Hale froze. "Property," he whispered. "She's a child." "A weapon," Voss corrected. Mercer shifted uncomfortably, though he didn't contradict it. Voss continued, tone clinical. "Unit 7, Kalia Rivers, is a lost asset, one of the most successful prototypes of the Valkyrian Youth Conditioning Program. Enhanced reflexes, combat intuition, coded nerve response. She is not a typical adolescent, and she does not belong in a school." Hale stared in horror. "You're telling me I've had a government-trained child soldier sitting in my English class? Not a soldier." Voss's voice dipped into something colder. "An assassin." The word hit Hale like a blow. His stomach twisted. His heart raced. Images of Kalia sitting quietly in the cafeteria, hood up, shoulders small, eyes empty, flashed before him. All this time she wasn't troubled. She was hiding, and now she was being hunted. Hale felt sick. Voss leaned forward, speaking as if issuing a routine instruction. "Recover the asset. Failure to comply or continued resistance initiates cleansing protocol." Mercer stiffened. "Director, cleansing. Is that necessary?" Voss's gaze sharpened. "She has resisted recovery twice already. If she continues, Kalia Rivers is to be treated as a compromised weapon." He paused, then delivered the order with terrifying calm. "If she refuses extraction, eliminate her." Hale's knees nearly buckled. "No," he whispered. "She's just a student, a child. You can't just—" Voss's eyes flicked to him, cold as a rifle barrel. "Your concern is irrelevant." Hale tried again, voice cracking. "This is my school. I will not allow a child to be killed on my campus." "You have no authority here," Voss said. "Stand by for completion." The screen flickered once, twice. Then Voss severed the feed. Silence crushed the room. Hale stared at the blank monitor, hands trembling. His entire world, the safe routines of detention slips and parent meetings, had just been shattered by the revelation that one of his students was being targeted for execution by a clandestine government program. Mercer exhaled through his nose, tilting his head as if listening to an internal directive. "The director has spoken. I'll coordinate the sweep." He turned to leave, but Hale grabbed the desk phone with a shaking hand. He dialed a number he'd been told to use only in unspeakable emergencies. Emergencies he had never imagined would involve a teenage girl. His voice cracked as soon as the line picked up. "This is Principal Hale," he said. "We have a situation, a child assassin. We need immediate intervention. Now." His last words trembled. "In my school, there is a weapon disguised as a student. As Hale calls for help, Voss deploys elite operatives into the school, the hunt turning deadly." The moment the sun dipped behind the horizon, Silver Ridge High shifted from chaos to something far worse. The emergency lights flicked off one by one until the entire school drowned in darkness. Only the red alarms strobed faintly across the walls, pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying beast. Then the automated lockdown system activated. KRA chunk, KRA chunk, KRA chunk. Doors slammed shut. Metal bolts locked into place. Cameras rebooted into surveillance mode. A cold robotic voice echoed through the corridors. All exits sealed. Unauthorized armed presence detected. Shelter immediately, but there was no shelter. Not for Kalia Rivers. She sprinted down the empty hallway, breath controlled yet fierce, each footstep a calculated whisper. Her hoodie clung to her shoulders as she slid around a corner just as the first Valkyrian strike team entered the building. Black suits, custom helmets, Weapons that weren't meant for civilian use. These weren't security guards. They weren't police. They were retrieval operatives, the kind sent only when something had gone catastrophically wrong, and tonight they were here for her. Behind her, Derek Mallory limped after her, bruised and breathless, but refusing to fall behind. "Kalia, wait! Slow down!" "I told you to hide," Kalia hissed. "I'm done hiding," Derek shot back, gripping his ribs. "I'm not letting them take you." Before she could reply, the corridor ahead erupted in white sparks as a flashnet device fired down from the ceiling, an electrified mesh designed to immobilize operatives like her. Kalia reacted before Derek even registered the threat. She shoved him backward, then spun sideways, sliding under the net in a fluid arc. Her palm struck the release node mid-motion, sending the electrified mesh collapsing harmlessly onto the floor. Derek gaped. How did you do that?" Kalia didn't answer, because answering meant remembering the drills, remembering the screams in the training chambers, remembering the moment she swore she'd never use these skills again. Her past was catching her. Rapid footsteps echoed behind them. Mercer's voice thundered through the hall. "Unit 7, stand down!" Kalia grabbed Derek's wrist. "Move!" They darted into a darkened science wing as a squad of operatives swept into the main hall. Laser sights sliced across the walls, searching for movement. Several drones hovered overhead, humming with predatory precision. Derek pressed against a row of lockers, lungs heaving. They're everywhere." "I know," Kalia whispered. Her eyes scanned the environment, mapping every shadow, every exit point, every corner where a sniper could be stationed. Her muscles twitched with instincts she hated. Instincts Valkyrian had carved into her bones. A faint tap echoed above them. Not footsteps, not equipment. A drone preparing to drop a restraint charge. Kalia didn't think. She launched upward, pushing off a locker, grabbing Derek by the collar and pulling him with her just as the drone fired, missing them by inches before Kalia ripped it from the air, smashing it into the floor in one movement. Derek stared at the crushed metal. That would have killed me." Kalia's voice was low. "That's the point." Another squad closed in. Kalia recognized their formation. Standard containment V formation, pinch tactic, staggered entry. She'd learned it at 13. Derek backed up, trembling. "Kalia, I didn't know. I didn't know what you've been through." "Forgetting is why I survived," she said tonelessly. "And remembering is why you won't," Mercer called out from the far end of the hall as he stepped into view. His capture unit glowed blue again. Kalia tightened her fists. But Derek stepped in front of her. "Kalia," he said shakily, give me the chance to fix what I did, to fix something, for once." It was reckless, it was stupid, it was brave, and for the first time, Kalia saw something in Derek that resembled humanity. She exhaled sharply. "Fine." She grabbed his arm and pulled him behind her as she dropped into a stance she had promised herself she would never use again. Because tonight wasn't about running, tonight was about surviving. Kalia and Derek flee into a sealed science lab where she finally reveals the truth about her past. The door to the old science lab groaned open with a metallic shriek, revealing a space untouched for years. Dust floated through the flashlight beam like drifting ash. Broken beakers lay scattered across counters. Shelves sagged under the weight of forgotten equipment. The air was heavy, stale, like the room itself had been holding its breath. Kalia Rivers slipped inside first, her movements silent, controlled. Derek stumbled in after her, wincing as the door slid shut behind them. Where are we?" Derek whispered. "A place no one checks," Kalia replied. "A place they won't search first." Her breath curled in the cold air. For a moment, the world outside, the agents, the drones, Mercer's commands, faded into a distant pulse. This room was a cocoon, eerie yet safe enough to speak truths she had buried for years. Derek pressed a hand to his ribs. "You said you weren't going back." What did he mean? Unit 7? Valkyrian? Kalia didn't answer immediately. She walked to an old counter, bracing her palms against the dusty surface. The tremor in her fingers was barely visible, but Derek saw it. She wasn't unbreakable. She was simply holding herself together with precision. Finally, she spoke. Valkyrian is real. It's a program run off the books, recruiting children they think can be molded. Her voice was flat. They train reflex, obedience, silence. They condition us into weapons. Derek's stomach twisted. Children? Like you? Like me, she echoed. But not just me. Something dark flickered across her face. Grief, sharp and sudden. Derek swallowed. What happened to you in there? Kalia inhaled through her nose. I didn't join. I was taken. The words sat in the air like a bruise forming. My sister and I were enrolled when we were small. She was Unit 4. I was Unit 7. Her eyes hardened. She tried to get us out. She told them we were done, that we wanted freedom. Derek's pulse thudded painfully. And they killed her, Kalia whispered. They told me she failed training, but I heard the report. I saw the footage. Her voice fractured, razor thin. They executed her for refusing orders, for trying to protect me. Silence swallowed the room. Derek felt the weight of it, the years of isolation, the hollow stares, the quiet rage sitting behind her calm exterior. The depression people mocked her for wasn't weakness. It was mourning. It was survival. He lowered himself onto a dusty stool. Kalia, I'm sorry. I should have seen you were hurting. I shouldn't have. This isn't about you, she said gently, but firmly. You didn't know. You couldn't have. But Derek shook his head. I should have stopped instead of making it worse. I treated you like you didn't matter. You didn't treat me like anything, she said. You treated an illusion. You never saw me. That stung more than any insult. Before he could respond, Kalia's head snapped toward the door. Her entire body shifted. Shoulders angled, weight distributed, breath paused. Derek froze. What is it? Kalia raised a finger to her lips. Outside, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of synchronized footsteps. Military pacing, boots sweeping the hallway with deadly purpose. The Valkyrian retrieval team. They found the wing, Kalia murmured. They're sweeping room by room. Derek's face drained of color. What do we do? Kalia grabbed his wrist, pulling him toward the emergency exit hatch in the corner, rusted shut but still functional with force. We run, she said, and this time you stay close. Her fingers tightened around his. The footsteps grew louder. The door handle rattled. They were out of time. As they escape into the courtyard, Director Voss arrives in person, and the confrontation becomes unavoidable. The emergency hatch groaned as Kalia forced it open, and a burst of cold night air hit them. She and Derek climbed out into the outdoor basketball courts, where the floodlights, normally bright, now flickered in uneven pulses, barely illuminating the asphalt. The sky above was moonless, the campus eerily silent. Too silent, Derek panted heavily, clutching his side as he followed Kalia across the court. Are we safe out here? No, Kalia said simply. This is where they'd corner me. And as if summoned by her words, a harsh spotlight snapped on from the roof of the gym. A beam of white light cut across the darkness like a knife, illuminating a single figure, Director Voss. He stood on the far edge of the court, hands clasped casually behind his back, as though arriving at a business meeting instead of a manhunt. His coat fluttered in the cold wind, the Valkyrian insignia reflecting faintly beneath the spotlight. Kalia stopped walking. Derek did too, because something in the air shifted. It wasn't fear, it was authority, absolute, unquestioned, terrifying. Mercer emerged from behind Voss, flanking him, but unlike before, he didn't carry the same rigid confidence. His jaw was clenched, brows drawn tight, the bruise on his neck still dark where Kalia had struck him. Voss's voice carried across the court with unnerving calm. Unit 7. Kalia didn't reply. You were trained better than this, he continued. Running, hiding, associating with civilians? His eyes flicked disdainfully toward Derek. You've grown sloppy. Derek stiffened, terrified yet defiant. Kalia stepped slightly in front of him. Voss's mouth lifted at one corner. Not a smile, but an acknowledgment of her instinct. "There it is," he murmured. "The protector, the weapon with a conscience. It's why we chose you. Why you were our best." Kalia's jaw tightened. "I'm not yours. You were built for us." "No," she said, steady and cold. "I was born human. You turned me into something else." Voss took a step forward, hands still clasped behind him. "The Valkyrian program invested 12 years in you, Kalia. Do you have any idea how many candidates survived as long as you?" "Too few," Mercer muttered under his breath, then froze, as if realizing he had spoken too honestly. Voss's eyes flicked toward him, sharp. "Do you have an opinion to share, Agent Mercer?" Mercer's jaw locked. "Director, she's a child. She always was." Voss stared at him with slow, growing disappointment. "Doubt," he exhaled softly. "How tedious." Then he turned back to Kalia. "Your sister was weak. You are not." His tone was surgical, emotionless. "You will come back. You will finish your conditioning, and you will serve as intended." Kalia's breath shook once, only once, before it stabilized into something colder than stone. "I'm not going back," she said. Voss chuckled quietly. "And what will you do? Fight me?" Kalia stepped forward, her eyes narrowing with a resolve she had buried for years. "No," she said. "I will end Valkyrian tonight." The words cracked through the air like a gunshot. Mercer inhaled sharply. Derek's heart dropped to his stomach. For the first time, Voss's expression shifted, only slightly, but enough to show that Kalia's defiance wasn't expected. "I see," he said softly. "Then you've chosen the unwise path." He raised one hand. From the shadows behind him, two shapes emerged, masked, armored, moving with a deadly elegance unlike the other operatives. Voss smiled faintly. "Let us begin, then. I will send my finest." The elite operatives stepped forward, triggering the ultimate confrontation on the school's central courtyard. The central courtyard of Silver Ridge High was normally a place of morning chatter and lazy sunlight, students gathering around benches, teachers sipping lukewarm coffee. Tonight, it looked like a battlefield. Floodlights flickered. Wind tore through the flagpoles, making the ropes clang like warning bells. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the cracked pavement. Kalia Rivers stepped into the open circle of light. Across from her, Director Voss approached with a predator's calm, coat billowing, eyes hollow, every movement precise and rehearsed. The two elite operatives formed a perimeter, forcing Kalia, Derek, and the wavering Mercer into the center of the courtyard. Derek hovered behind Kalia, trembling but refusing to leave her side. Mercer stood stiffly off to the right, one hand resting near his holstered weapon. Voss's gaze slid over both men before settling solely on Kalia. "End this childish resistance," he said softly. "You were made for obedience." Kalia dropped into a stance, so fluid it seemed like the air itself shifted around her. "I was made into a weapon," she corrected. "You don't get to decide how I fire." Voss stepped forward, shedding the coat with a practiced motion. Beneath it, he wore tactical gear, etched with the Valkyrian insignia. The sight of it triggered something deep inside her. Training responses, buried memories, the echoes of screams she'd spent years forgetting. "Unit 7, Voss said. "Engage." The first strike was instantaneous. Voss lunged, not with brute force, but with impossible speed, his hand slicing toward Kalia's throat. She ducked beneath it, sweeping her leg low. Voss vaulted over her sweep like gravity meant nothing. They collided in the center, elbow to forearm, knee to palm, strike meeting counterstrike. Their movements were mirrors, two weapons forged by the same fire. Derek stared in horror. "Humans don't move like that." Mercer didn't answer. Not because he disagreed, but because watching the two of them fight was like witnessing a myth. Precise violence, choreographed with deadly perfection. Voss struck again, palm cutting toward Kalia's ribs. She blocked, but the impact sent a tremor up her arm. He followed with a spinning kick. She dodged by mere inches. "You lack discipline," Voss said, voice steady despite the flurry of motion. Emotion has corrupted you, and you lack humanity, she countered. He lunged again. This time, Voss grabbed her by the collar, slamming her onto the concrete. She gasped as the breath was knocked from her lungs. Derek moved forward instinctively, but Mercer threw out an arm, stopping him. "Don't," Mercer whispered. "She's not finished." Kalia twisted, flipping onto her feet with reflexive grace. Voss smiled faintly. "Pleased, you haven't forgotten everything." "I remember enough," she said coldly. And then she exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath that signaled she was done restraining herself. Mercer's eyes widened. "She's activating it." "What?" Derek cried. "Silent veil, a technique forbidden even inside Valkyrian." Kalia moved with an otherworldly stillness. No wasted steps, no audible breath, no telegraphed strikes. One instant she stood before Voss, the next she was behind him. Her hand snapped across the base of his skull. Her knee crushed into his spine. Her elbow struck the nerve cluster beneath his shoulder. 3 silent movements. Voss's body convulsed. He collapsed to his knees. Kalia caught him before he hit the ground completely, her hand gripping his collar. His voice rasped out, barely a whisper but venomous. "You will never be free." His fingers clutched her shirt. Then his body slumped, unconscious. The courtyard fell silent. As Voss falls, the full scope of Valkyrian's secrets, and the evidence to destroy them, begins to surface. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the Federal Investigations Bureau, cutting clean lines across the conference table where Kalia Rivers sat. The contrast between this room and last night's battlefield was staggering. No alarms, no shadows, no hunters, just sterile walls, humming fluorescent lights, and the quiet murmur of agents preparing a formal statement. But Kalia didn't relax. Weapons didn't relax. Weapons. They just waited. Across from her, Agent Mercer sat with his wrists loosely bandaged, the after-effects of Kalia's silent veil still visible in the faint tremor of his fingers. He avoided her eyes, not out of fear, but something close to shame. Derek Mallory sat further down the table, hunched, out of place in a room filled with government badges and tactical gear. The purple bruise on his jaw had darkened overnight. He looked like a kid who'd survived a nightmare he still didn't understand. A group of federal investigators entered, 2 women in suits, a forensic tech with a laptop, and a senior officer with a steely jaw. They approached Kalia with an air of careful respect, like she was both a survivor and a live explosive. "Miss Rivers," the senior officer said formally, "you indicated you had evidence related to the Valkyrian conditioning program?" Kalia reached into her jacket, withdrawing a small black drive, unassuming, no larger than a fingertip, but heavier than anything she'd carried in her life. She placed it on the table. "This contains everything," she said. "Training logs, facility coordinates, footage, termination orders, false death certificates. Every child they used, every child they lost." Mercer flinched. The officer nodded to the forensic tech, who began scanning the drive. Code streamed across the monitor, encrypted files, video clips, redacted documents unraveling in real time. One investigator covered her mouth. "Dear God," another whispered. This is a blueprint for creating child assassins." Kalia kept her gaze steady. "It's a blueprint for destroying them." Silence fell, a heavy, suffocating silence. Then the senior officer cleared his throat and approached Kalia directly. "Miss Rivers," he said, voice gentler, "with this evidence, we can dismantle Valkyrian permanently. But doing so will put you in danger. The agency is prepared to offer you full protective status, new identity, relocation, federal shielding." Kalia's hands curled slightly on the table. She didn't want to disappear. She didn't want to run anymore. But she had seen Voss, had heard his words. "You will never be free." Freedom wasn't offered. Freedom was taken. Mercer finally spoke, his voice rough. "Kalia, they'll come after you, even without Voss. There are others still loyal to the program. She didn't look at him. I know. An investigator turned toward Derek. Mr. Mallory? Derek jumped. Yes? We'll need your statement. You witnessed Agent Mercer's attempt at retrieval and Director Voss's confrontation. Derek looked at Kalia, an unspoken question in his eyes. Is it okay? For the first time, she gave him a small nod. Derek exhaled shakily. I'll tell you everything. The agents exchanged approving glances. For the first time in years, Kalia felt the faintest pulse of something unfamiliar, hope, but it didn't last long. The senior officer straightened. Miss Rivers, there's one final decision. You can accept protection, or you can choose your own path. Stay here, move away, disappear, whatever you choose. Kalia stared at the sunlight reflecting off the table. She had survived training, survived escape, survived Voss, but freedom demanded a choice she had never been allowed to make. Kalia steps outside the federal building, facing the first real choice of her life. Stay or walk away. 1 week later, the grounds of Silver Ridge High looked almost painfully normal. Cherry trees swayed gently in the late morning breeze. Students spilled across the courtyard, laughing, shouting, trading gossip, like nothing extraordinary had ever happened within these walls. But something had changed, something irreversible. The moment Kalia Rivers stepped through the front gate, conversations faltered, heads turned, whisper threads rippled across the crowd, not out of fear this time, but awe. The girl who had once sat alone in the cafeteria with trash dripping from her hair now walked with a quiet gravity that made people shift out of her path without being asked. She wasn't hiding anymore. The federal agents had fulfilled their promise. Her file had been cleared. Valkyrian had been declared a rogue program under investigation. The retrieval order had been officially rescinded. For the first time in her life, she wasn't being hunted. She was free. Principal Hale approached her at the entrance steps, his usually stern expression softened by something approaching relief. Miss Rivers, he said, folding his hands, your official reinstatement papers and your clearance. No more redacted files, no more security flags. Kalia took the folder gently. The weight of it felt unreal. Thank you, she said quietly. Hale shook his head. No, thank you. You didn't just survive. You saved every person in this school. Kalia's gaze drifted past him, to the spot in the courtyard where she had fought Voss. The cracked pavement was patched over, as if the ground itself wanted to forget. But she never would. She didn't regret that. She only regretted how long it had taken her to fight back. As she stepped further into the courtyard, a familiar voice called out, Kalia! Derek Mallory jogged toward her, out of breath despite the short distance. His bruises were fading, his posture straighter than she'd ever seen. When he reached her, he didn't try to joke. He didn't smile. He didn't pretend nothing had happened. Instead, he knelt right there in front of the entire school, not in fear, not in apology, but in acknowledgement. You saved my life, Derek said, voice thick. You saved all of us, and I didn't treat you like a person. I treated you like someone beneath me. He swallowed hard. But you're the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm sorry for everything. Gasps and murmurs spread through the courtyard, but Kalia didn't care about the audience. She looked at Derek, not as her bully, not as the boy who once made her feel small, but as someone who had chosen to change. Growth was rarer than strength, and Derek had found both. You don't have to kneel, she said softly. I'm not kneeling because I have to, he replied. I'm kneeling because you deserve it. For the first time in a long time, Kalia felt something stir in her chest. Not just relief, not just resolve. Belonging. She stepped past him, toward the open gate of Silver Ridge High. Sunlight spilled across her face, warm and unwavering. The breeze lifted her hair, carrying away the last remnants of the girl who had once lived in shadow. She breathed in a new world, a new beginning, a life she would finally choose for herself. Under the golden light, she whispered the words that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. I am not a weapon. I am a survivor. And she walked forward toward freedom, toward her future, toward everything she had never been allowed to dream of. And that's how a girl everyone dismissed as broken proved she was the only one strong enough to break the cycle. Kalia didn't just survive her bullies, she stopped the entire machine that tried to control her life. Derek knelt because he finally understood the truth. Some people aren't meant to be stepped on. They're meant to rise. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of Kalia's journey shocked you the most? If this story hit you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter.